Growing up in the early 2000s, a lot of my time when I was at home consisted of playing my GameCube, watching superhero cartoons, and replaying old DVDs that my Nana just had lying around. Some were obscure, like the Little Rascals or Homeward Bound, but something that caught my attention was one that she had bought for my big cousin that sparked a love for a movie that I have rarely felt the same about since, and that movie was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, released in 1990. I absolutely adore this movie, and it honestly isn't talked about enough outside of the Ninja Turtles fandom. I tell people this is one of my favorite movies of all time, and they have this look at my face like, okay, this movie didn't really hit for critics, but it absolutely crushed it at the box office for the time, and for good reason. There's so much good quality stuff in this movie that, while it may not generally be groundbreaking in peak cinema, it ticks a lot of my own boxes personally. What it do? It's your boy Daffy, and allow me to tell you why I believe that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990 is one of my favorite movies of all time, and by the end of this video, it might be yours too. Starting off, this film is gorgeous. I have a really soft spot for the way 90s movies look, given that almost all movies during this time were shot on celluloid film, and that's why you get the real grainy look, but the cinematography is actually pretty nice. The hustle and bustle of New York in this opening sequence is nice, and throughout the film you have some really nice and memorable shots that kind of just burn into your memory. I especially like how dark the flashback sequences are. If you're familiar with the Ninja Turtles lore, it's pretty simple. 4 baby turtles were dropped into the New York sewer by a child who just so happened to save a blind man from getting hit by a truck. This movie doesn't go into this particularly because low-key they would have gotten into huge legal trouble, considering that the kid who dropped them was a huge reference to Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, and they fell into a vat of ooze, and yeah, opening credits. There's some pretty distinct differences between the Turtles' origins here and other forms of media. In some media, Splinter found a book with martial arts forms, and that's how they learned to fight. But in this iteration, Splinter was Hamato Yoshi's pet rat who learned how to fight by watching his master. Also, in the IDW series, which I'm currently reading, yeah, there's implied that the Turtles and Splinter and all this other stuff is a whole method of reincarnation, and it's actually pretty neat. While I do think that's pretty silly to imagine a rat practicing his katas, the whole premise of this entire thing is goofy, so I'm definitely giving it a pass. The opening of this film revolves around April O'Neil giving a news report on the state of gang crime, ranging from breaking and entering to petty theft. I don't believe they could have gone hard into the violence like some of the Mirage comics, because not a single gun is seen in the film, and that most likely would have gotten them an R rating, but I do think they did a good job with what they were allowed to do. Nobody is reporting these crimes, and people are scared. New York is tense. The police are painted to be almost incompetent, at least from April's point of view. We see that April is doing a lot of what great reporters do, and that's ruffle some feathers. We learn a lot about her just from a few short interactions. April is a very headstrong woman, and not in a abrasive way, as we see that she is extremely nurturing and compassionate, but she has a very strong spirit. And in terms of strong female characters that are regularly discussed, I feel like she isn't discussed enough. Even in her interactions with Casey, he has this very stereotypical chicks like stuff like that 90s attitude, and she puts up with pretty much none of it. The first introduction we actually get to our titular characters is when April ends up getting robbed by some gang members, and they're masked in shadow, with the only thing that we hear as the audience is the sounds of blows landing and rope being stripped. The only evidence that anyone was here was a lone sigh. The soundtrack for this movie can definitely be dated in certain points, but a lot of the music actually I love. The guitars and Shredder's theme absolutely bang, bro. The Turtles themselves look really good even now. Maybe it's because I watched this movie on loop over and over again until my eyes bled, but I honestly think they haven't really aged at all too much. The team over at Henson Productions did a phenomenal job on these guys. I mean, hats off to them. I'm not gonna go over every single event that happens in this movie chronologically, because I'd actually rather you go watch it for yourself, but instead I'll be going into the 4 turtles themselves and some general overall thoughts. First up is Donatello. Now, unfortunately, Donatello doesn't do anything of significance in this film. He's just kind of there, more of a chilled out Michelangelo, and I honestly don't hate it. In the next movie, he ends up contributing a whole lot, but that movie is still an inferior film compared to this one at the end of the day. Now, next up is Michelangelo. Michelangelo is in full form in this movie. He's cracking jokes, he's lovable, he's got that 90s lingo that I still can't pull out of my vocabulary to this day for some reason. Like, y'all need to understand me when I say this movie shaped my development in a very serious fashion. Michelangelo is the most immature out of the group here, and it's done in a very tasteful way. For example, Splinter tells the Turtles that he is hard on them because he loves them, and that one day he won't be there to give them guidance. They're all goofing off and not really taking anything he said seriously, until Donatello catches Mikey all alone by himself staring at the moon, waiting on his pizza order. Donatello asks Mikey what he thinks about what Splinter said about them having to face the possibility of them not having him around, and Michelangelo simply takes a second and responds, "Time's up, $3 off." He very clearly heard what Donatello said, but he just doesn't want to think about it. This isn't really played off like a joke either. Mikey doesn't even consider being without Splinter a possibility, because at the end of the day, who wants to think about a day without their dad in their life after being so close for so long? Mikey is definitely the second most emotional out of the four, with the first one being Raphael, in my opinion. I mean, it's kind of a tie between Raphael and Leonardo, but you get what I mean. When the group transitions to the farm, there's actually a deleted scene where Michelangelo is so angry he ends up breaking and slamming everything in the barn around him. Mikey may joke around and be our favorite goofball, but he loves his family more than anything, and we see that with various incarnations that without them, he can go down a really, really dark path. I may actually review The Last Ronin in a future video, but that story is absolutely nothing short of tragic. Raphael is up next, and he absolutely stole the show in this movie for me. We see more hints of this in the next movie, but Raphael has this need to be up top in the outside world. He wants to go to the movies, he wants to feel like he belongs somewhere. He loves New York, and he wants nothing more to enjoy it, but he just can't because of what he looks like. There's definitely some racial undertones that you could look at, and I've even seen some relate the struggles that the Turtles have with the outside world could possibly be relating to first generation immigrants, but I personally don't come from that background, so it feels inappropriate for me to comment on that. Raphael's interactions with Casey actually aren't that plentiful in this movie as some would believe. Raphael's first interaction with Casey is seeing Casey go too far when dealing with some purse snatchers, and you can clearly see where Raph sees himself within Casey and their own anger issues. They don't really go into Casey's backstory here, which is a shame in my opinion, because the actor that plays him did a phenomenal job. He's a joy to watch on screen every time he's on. Splinter ends up having a heart-to-heart with Raphael about his anger and essentially tells him what Splinter said in the 2007 TMNT movie, in which that his anger is sometimes fueled by the passion to protect his family. Splinter tells Raphael that though he can be angry and feel all these different things, he shouldn't forget the support system that he was gifted with, that support system being his brothers and Splinter himself. I absolutely love this scene. The lighting by the soul candle in the room makes it super intimate. Raph is really a big softie when it comes to protecting people, as seen when he saves April from these foot dogs. This is super off topic, but I've always hated how Splinter's fingers look in this incarnation. They just look like long, furry hot dogs to me. Raphael's utter exhaust upon hearing Mikey's impersonations really drive home the fact that this is a family, that everyone jokes, everyone's favorite impressions, they know all these different things. The Turtles have a great chemistry between these movies. Also, again, super random, I just realized that Donatello has like one interaction with Raphael in this movie, and it's the War and Peace line. The Turtles coming back to find their home destroyed and Master Splinter missing was pretty dark for me as a kid, honestly. Raphael is nothing short of destroyed here. He knows that somehow he was the reason that their home was compromised. The scream that Raphael lets out here, man, is haunting. This was extremely well done. Raphael arguing with Leo about going to find Splinter has been discussed to death, so I think I'll skip that, but it is funny seeing Donatello and Mikey not want anything to do with Leo and Raph's egos clashing for the 1000th time. Speaking of Leo, he has some pretty interesting moments in this film as well. His argument with Raphael at the apartment reveals that he can actually get a pretty fat head sometimes. The 2012 series actually had a pretty good episode that dealt with this, as where Leo gets tired of leading and relinquishes that duty to Raphael for a night. Splinter berates Leo and says that it doesn't matter if he likes it or not, but his responsibility to leading his brothers isn't something that he can just pick up and put down whenever he feels like. Him saying that they didn't need Raphael anyway was a major no-no, especially as a leader of them. Funny enough, Leonardo actually has a similar temper to Raphael in pretty much every incarnation. It's just that Leonardo is better at applying that anger elsewhere and using his more spiritual side to cope with it as well. Another detail I noticed is that when Raphael was thrown through the window after getting jumped by the Foot Clan, Leonardo was actually the first one to come to his side to make sure he was still alive. Leo and Raph can argue all day up and down, but at the end of the day, I mean, that's his brother. That's his own flesh and blood. This is even more apparent after the Turtles are driven out of New York. It's Leonardo who stays by Raphael's side. I mean, April tells him that it's going to be okay, but Leonardo still feels guilty for what happened. After all, he didn't stop him from going outside by himself. He knows that he was out of line for what he said to him. Leonardo is elated to see his brother awaken with the living, and Raphael already accepted Leonardo's apology way before he even had to say anything. After this, Everyone is still mourning the presumed loss of Splinter, and Leonardo goes to meditate and connect with Splinter. This campfire scene is absolutely fantastic, as Splinter tells his sons how he is proud of them and that they are unstoppable when they are together. It's actually scary how much of a Star Wars influence was shown here. I'm gonna be completely honest, this scene still gets me a little emotional, seeing all their reactions to finding out that their father is really alive. Raphael is just simply amazed. He is ecstatic. He is over the moon once he finds out that his father is still alive. Leonardo is thankful that everyone else knows that Splinter is alive and is even more focused in their mission to get home and get their master back. Michelangelo starts shedding tears, and the sense of relief for him must be absolutely astonishing. And actually, Donatello's first instinct is to comfort Mikey here, which really pushes the envelope forward that this is a family unit. To be honest, I don't want to talk about Danny because I just kind of don't care about him. I didn't care about him then as a kid, and I certainly don't care about him now as an adult. Kino Solo's low diff, by the way. Now the Shredder. Bro, this man had one of the coldest entries in all of fiction. The music, the cape, what they say, bro, what they be saying, you know, Rokusaki Abadman, you know? Full transparency, I do think that the final fight was a bit anticlimactic, especially after seeing the fantastic fight scene in the apartment. Seeing the Shredder basically one-tap all of them was pretty cool as a kid, but I do think the fight choreography left a lot to be desired here, considering all the build-up the Shredder got beforehand. The Shredder's beef with Hamato Yoshi and Splinter has always been fairly petty, and I think they actually did a good job making him this raging asshole without being overly cartoonish like the second movie. The Shredder's demise is actually hilarious looking back on it, because Casey Jones just casually commits first-degree murder like it's no big deal. Also, this clip of Casey Jones just like punting Hun like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is absolutely hilarious to me. I do feel like one of the issues I do have with the film is we don't see enough action from the gang, which does suck, but understandably it is hard to maneuver in those suits. I honestly don't know how the hell they did these flips and everything. It has to be wires or something. Like, this is wild. The second movie had longer fight scenes, but unfortunately, due to censorship from outraged parents, none of the Turtles could use their weapons. In the third movie, they used their weapons again, but that movie is... Ooh! Godzilla Mendoza actually has a really great video going through the progression of all the TMNT movies, actually. Make sure y'all go throw a sub and like his way, man. He's actually a really cool cat. I absolutely adore the synths in this final battle against the Shredder, man. It really sells this overwhelming sense of desperation in this final climax, man. The score in this movie is absolutely fantastic. The Shredder preying on the disenfranchised youth of New York and exploiting them for his own monetary gain is a cool concept, and I did think they did a fine job with what they were given. The humor isn't awful in this movie either. Some lines can be camp here and there, but there's some genuinely funny moments here. I absolutely love this movie, man. This movie may have some flaws here and there, and a lot of people don't think it's a great movie, but this holds a special place in my heart. As I actually rewatched this movie while I'm making the script, the walk down memory lane is hidden. It's hidden. Please go give this movie a watch. With that is why I believe that the TMNT 1990 movie is peak nostalgia. Let me know down in the comments below what movie for yourself is peak nostalgia. Discord will be down in the description below. As usual, thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, leave a like and make sure you're subscribed. It's me, boy Daffy, guys. I will see you in the next video. All right, peace.